Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. I'm so happy to have you here. Today's video is going to be all about saving tips, especially if you are a big spender in Genshin or someone that can't stop pulling on banners. But don't worry, this video is not only limited to PRIMOGEMS. We also have sections in the timestamps for different things that you can save in Genshin, such as mora, EXP, or materials you farm in the world. Feel free to skip to the timestamp of the item that you need or watch the entire video if you have trouble saving on everything. Without further ado, let us get started in this video. So to begin, let's start off with a resource that all of us always need but can't seem to get enough of, and that is mora. Now after you watch this video, you might want to check out the mora farming video where I tell you ways where you can go and farm mora in your world and hopefully refrain from doing a bunch of ley lines because those can be so annoying to do. So if you are struggling with getting mora, please check out that video. Hopefully it helps. But if your problems come with saving mora, here are the tips I have for you. The first best thing you can do is prioritize leveling one character at a time. This especially works for talents. Since talents are super expensive and it's really hard to afford raising multiple characters, and even for me raising one character can drain my mora a lot. And the only reason I have this much is because I've been exploring the map lately. But if you don't have all the time in the world to explore, getting mora can be difficult. Especially if you do have limited playtime, it's really good to just invest your time into one character rather than getting your mind all over the place and trying to raise every single character and making enough mora for all of them. Remember that these characters are on your account permanently, so there really is no rush to build them. I know that the Spiral Abyss and Imaginarium Theater can be tempting, especially since they buff those certain characters, but if you really want to play those characters in the theater, you can always borrow from a friend. I know that the Abyss does cater to that character on the banner, but honestly you still can clear Abyss without this character, and it is possible to make other team comps that do suit the playstyle and the buffs for that Abyss cycle. By prioritizing your builds into one character, you won't be spending mora all over the place, and also you will see improvements in one character as opposed to raising a bunch of them. For example, I've made the mistake of raising characters like Varessa, Kinich, and Kuki all in one go, but as a result, I don't see any of them really improving that much because I've sort of been scattering my mora all over the place and not really investing in them as much as I hoped for. Therefore, if you spend a bunch of mora on different characters, it's really hard to see some progress. As opposed to investing all your time and resources into one character, then you can make them really strong and usable. Here's another tip: if you are someone who loves to build characters the moment that you get them, one thing I want to tell you is you might want to just pause before you do so. There are so many characters and all of them have a very different playstyle, which means that maybe some characters do not suit your playstyle and you might not enjoy playing some characters as opposed to others. So what I like to do before building a character is make sure I test them out in both domains or the theater if I can borrow from a friend, or if I can't test them out, I will look them up to see what their playstyle is like, just to get a feel for the character and see if I actually like to play them. This can help get a lot of insight on the character's playstyle and if you actually like their gameplay, as we know that some characters have very special mechanics like Arlecchino with Bond of Life, and if you aren't someone that really wants to think about that, then maybe getting Arlecchino might not be for you. Or if it's not even pulling for a character and it's just a character that you have, such as a character like Gaming, maybe plunge attacks are not your style, therefore you might not want to raise Gaming. So just be sure to know enough about the character before you put a lot of investment, especially since making the wrong move can drain a lot of mora, and we all know that you can't get that mora back, and you don't want to accidentally raise a character that you're never going to play again in the future. If you are someone though that does want to raise characters and you are certain on the character you're raising, a tip that I have to feel less guilty about your spending is to just raise them over a longer period of time. Let's say for example you just got Ian-san, and I know a lot of you did. If I want to eventually use Ian-san and I am sure about this decision, I would just raise Ian-san over the course of around a week or two. I know that it really doesn't do much for your mora since you're still spending it anyways, but sometimes you can feel less guilty about the fact that you are spending all in one go, since I know that clicking level up and seeing all your resources deplete in one single sitting is very draining, and if you aren't someone that wants to see all this hard work and progress go to waste, you can always just raise the character over a longer period of time and you might just feel better about it. Again, this is not really a tip on saving, but it's more a tip on feeling better about your spending in Genshin. Here's another talent tip for spending mora to make sure that you're not spending as much on talents as you think you might need to, and that is when it comes to raising certain talents. Now, as we know, every character has a normal attack, skill, and burst, and you can invest individually into each talent. But just remember that some characters are support characters and some characters are DPSs, which means that you will not need to spend on raising every single one of their talents. In this case, a character like Xingqiu, who I only use for his E skill and his burst, I would not need to raise his normal attack attacks at all. I know that the talent reference guide says that you can level it up, and the training guide does recommend that you can level up his normal attack, but if you really aren't using his normal attack, then there's no point in raising it whatsoever. Because raising his normal attack costs just as much as raising the skill, and you know that the skill and burst get a lot more damage than his normal attacks, there's really no point in investing so much mora into raising something that you barely even use. This also goes for scenarios with characters that have an infused skill or a special kind of skill and normal attacks, such as Malvika, who uses her motorcycle to attack, or Hu Tao, who does charge attacks after a skill. Just make sure you look up a guide to see where their damage scales from, whether that's their normal attack or their skill, so that you don't accidentally spend on raising the wrong thing. Obviously, if they are a main DPS, you might want to level up their normal attack, but really be sure to look this up so that you are not spending extra mora than you need to, and so you can save all those precious resources for leveling up a character that actually matters. Here's another example. My Farina has level 10 talents for her E and burst, but her normal attack stays at level 1 because I really don't use it, and there's no point leveling it up when she is barely on the field doing normal attacks anyways. The last mora tip that I have for you guys is to set a goal for your mora, so when you are out and farming, try to stick to that goal and achieve a certain amount of it, such as you might go and farm for a day and say you want to reach 12 million mora, and try your very best to stick to that goal, and you will feel accomplished definitely, and you will feel better about raising characters knowing that you really worked hard for them. This also goes the opposite way, and you might want to set a minimum mora amount. This is the amount of mora that you never want to go under, such as you might say to yourself, you never want to go under 5 million mora. This really does help a lot and puts a limit to my spending, just so that I have a bunch of backup mora in case there's a character I really need to raise in an emergency, or there's a resource I need to buy. Just try your best to stick to these goals, whether that be a mora limit or a mora reaching goal. You will feel better about yourself if you do stick to these goals, and raising characters will make you definitely feel more accomplished. Okay, now moving on to EXP saving tips. Obviously for character EXP, similar tips will apply to mora, and those are the ones such as making sure you know the character well enough to see if you want to build them, and also building one character at a time just so you're not overspending. But if you do want to try and save the smallest amount of EXP, this mainly works for lower leveled characters, but if you do want to save all that little EXP, one thing you can do if you're not able to ascend your character to the next level, for example, if I can't yet ascend my Chevreuse to level 80, but I still want to level her up to her max potential, click auto add here, but then click on the highest level book and -1. So now this way, you're leveling that character up to 79, because every time your character defeats an opponent, they do gain natural EXP, so they can level up naturally. Although it is a very small amount of EXP, if you don't really have a lot of EXP to spare, it's better to not cap off the limit of EXP that you can gain, and try to level them up naturally if you can. Again, this only really works for lower level characters, but if you are that desperate to save the smallest amount of EXP, then try going for this tip. If you're low on XP books, I'd say avoid raising these low level characters, even to raise them to level 20. Also, for some reason, these characters are all on my friendship team, but I don't make them do things like fight things at all. They're just claiming commission rewards and everything, yet somehow they're still leveling up, which is weird. I don't actually know why. I'm not sure if these commissions do give character EXP at all, but they are leveling up for some reason. So if you do need to naturally level up characters, I guess you can put them on your friendship team. I don't want to say anything because I don't really know how this works, but yeah, they're actually gaining EXP, so I guess you can do that too. Also, we all are aware that getting to level 20 gives you a free wish, but if you are low on EXP books and you can't really afford getting this level 20 wish, then refrain from spending your EXP books into getting it, just because you can spend those EXP books somewhere else. I obviously know that it's not a lot that you're really saving, and you can basically farm these in a day, but still, it's really worth it to just save it for characters that truly deserve it, as opposed to getting it just for the free wish and never using them again. But once again, that's my opinion, and if you really think the free wish is more important, absolutely go ahead. But personally, I just wish that I could get my EXP back from these characters that I raised and don't use now, such as characters like Kale, Aloy, and Mika. I don't know, I just wish I didn't raise them and could get the EXP back. Now for a tip on saving up talent books. If you've seen enough of my videos, you will know that I tell you all the time you can get talent books from chests. So if you are looking for some talent books and you need to raise a bunch of characters, the best thing you can do is explore the land which that character is from, such as if it is a Natlan character, go explore chests in Natlan and new areas, because 1, you'll get a bunch of new rewards too, but not only that, you're also getting talent books, which can be really helpful if you don't want to do the domain or don't really have resin to spare just to get talent books in the domains. Exploring the area of land first really helps me out a ton and saves me a lot of time on any extra farming, because I've also saved so much resin, and I feel like it was worth more of my time to go and get these talent books as opposed to farming them over and over in a domain when they were just sitting around in my world. Also, with talent books, if you want to limit your spending, the best thing you can do is have a bunch of talent books to spare, again in case you need to emergency build up a character for some reason, or if another character you have does need them to, you could always do that. But my saving tip for you is mainly just saving your time and effort. So if you haven't started exploring yet, this is your sign. I'm telling you to go out and farm those talent books, but not in the domains. Now on to talent materials. These are the ones that you get from the weekly bosses, and I have quite a few tips for this one. So the first thing is just do 3 domains per week. You don't need to do extra, but I also don't suggest that you skip them out entirely. Even if you think you don't need any more, it's better to just do them because they take a while to gain, and also you're not guaranteed per week which ones you get. So it's always better to just do all 3 each week, especially since you do get a resin discount, and it's better for your account in the long run. One thing that I tend to do for these materials is I refrain from spending my dream solvents on them, and that is purely because I like to build characters over a longer course of time. Now obviously if I need like a final piece of that talent material, I will use a dream solvent, but if I'm building a character and it's going to take a long time, I wouldn't use a dream solvent to exchange 6 at a time or something, and this is mainly just a pacing mechanism so that you don't spend all at once. This goes back to the tip that I mentioned earlier about taking a longer time to level up your characters, but I feel like using dream solvents speeds up my progress, and obviously some of you might want that, and that's totally fine if you need it for speeding up progress, but for someone like me, I don't mind doing slow progress, so that's why I avoid using dream solvents, and I am completely fine with waiting until I have all required materials for it. But again, this is just my personal playstyle, and if you would also like to take a longer time, my suggestion is just to save up your dream solvents for when you actually need them. Obviously, having 100 dream solvents is kind of excessive, and I do acknowledge that. I've just created this habit of not using these items since I literally started Genshin, and I kind of never picked up on it eventually. But yeah, just take this particular piece of advice with a grain of salt and do what you feel like suits your account best and will make you more satisfied after building a character. Okay, now on another note, this is another drop from weekly bosses, and those are the billets. I like to mention a lot of these in my farming videos, and something I really want you guys to remember is try to save these if possible, especially if you have these billet troves, since there might be a time where you need to craft a particular weapon but don't have the desired billet. If you keep these closed, you can decide which weapon that you want for it, as opposed to opening it and regretting your decision later, which is why the majority of my billet troves are actually closed. But for the weapons I have here, these are all from weekly boss drops and any other locations that you can get them from. I've saved these up for a long time, that's why there's so many, but if you want to start saving these up, the advice I have for you is you don't need to actually make any refinements for your weapons. My Chlorend uses a R1 Finale of the Deep, and personally I think it works fine. She is able to clear floors of the Abyss and do enough damage with a Hyper Bloom team, so don't feel like you need to craft R5, especially if it's a craftable weapon. All my craftables are R1 and they are working perfectly fine. The only ones I have R5 are fishing weapons or the weapons you get from events for free, so even if you do have 5 of these billets, there is no need whatsoever to actually craft it to R5, since it's better to save them for a possible future weapon, because you never know when you're going to come across another one of these again. Another very important piece of advice I have when crafting with your billets is to make sure you research the item before you craft it. Now, my personal experience coming across this is when I created the white blind. Originally this was for Noelle, but I didn't end up using it because I didn't really want to build Noelle, so make sure that you actually research the weapon you're crafting and understand who it works for and other characters that you can use it on. Examples like these would be the prototype Amber, which you know it can work on healers but also Nubilette, or weapons like the Iron Sting, which I have on Kazuha and Kuki. Just really make sure that you do your thorough research so that you're not mistakenly making the wrong weapon or wasting your billet entirely. If you do need to craft a weapon, it's either you're crafting a very specific weapon for a character, such as Tidal Shadow, which I made only for Navia, or you're crafting a weapon that can be switched around to multiple characters, such as something again like Iron Sting, which I can put on many characters. Okay, here we are in the artifact section of saving tips. Now when it comes to artifacts, we all know that roles can be the making or breaking of our account. I've been playing Genshin for such a long time now, and I still don't really have godly roles on my artifacts, and at this point I've kind of just dealt with it. Even one of my strongest DPSs, which is Navia, does not have a 4-piece artifact set, but that's a whole story for another day. Anyways, the tip that I am here to give you is to actually gamble less. Now what I mean by that is to make sure you are rolling artifacts such as these, which have your 2 desired desired stats on it, or at least 2 or more desired stats. For example, this one has crit rate and crit damage, so it's better to prioritize rolls on these which are guaranteed as opposed to something like this where it only has 1 desired stat and you're trying to roll for a stat you want. If this is really confusing, let me give you an example. This flower is already guaranteed crit rate and crit damage, which are the 2 stats that I want. So obviously I'm guaranteed that this flower is going to be good because it has these stats. However, something like this only has 1 stat that I want, and that is crit rate, which means I'll have to roll the artifact to hope I get crit damage. So let's roll the artifact. And boom, we did not get crit damage, but we wasted all those artifacts that could have been used for fodder for your stronger artifact. It's better to spend all those artifact EXP materials into raising an artifact that you know is going to be good than gambling your hard work and farming into an artifact that is not guaranteed to be the ones you want. At first, I thought this tip was self-explanatory until I saw my own personal friends doing this, and I was like, what are you doing? So I just wanted to make sure I mentioned this to you guys so that you don't make the same mistake, and hopefully so you don't end up with artifacts like this and do end up with artifacts like this. Also, if you are running out of artifact space, such as mine, which is almost at the maximum amount because I've been farming so much, the main suggestion I have for you is to turn your 4-star artifacts into artifact fodder and then turn your 5-star artifacts in the strong box so that you can get better ones. If you've already raised the 5-star artifact, then use it in the artifact transmuter. I don't really suggest using your 5-star artifacts to level other 5-star artifacts, mainly because you can use it in the transmuter and actually get the artifact that you want, as opposed to, again, gambling and hoping that you get the stats that you need. A while ago, we got an update on the artifact transmuter to better guarantee the rolls we want, therefore I suggest using this more than just gambling, and hopefully this saves a lot more of your time and resin that you spent into farming these hard-earned artifacts. And now it is time for the holy grail of the video, the Primogem saving tips. Now yes, I know my Primogems have gone down since the last video, and the reason is Varessa. I have been pulling for her, I lost the 50-50, I had to pull for her again. I think I went to pity twice almost because I had so many Primogems before this, and now I'm basically back to where I started. I have gone through such a journey when it comes to saving Primogems, so I have plenty of tips to share with you. And the first one is just remember that reruns do indeed exist. I know that it can be pretty painful to skip the character and have to wait another 5 months for them to come back, but also it will give you a reason to want to stick to the game more and also farm Primogems for their rerun. For example, I couldn't get Xianyun this time because I wanted to save my Primogems for either Shilonin or Venti, and I do understand that I might have to skip her and wait a longer time just for her to come back. If you do come across an update similar to this one where every single character seems so pullable and you just can't resist wanting to pull for their character, their weapon, the 4-star, everything, just remember that their rerun will come back eventually and you have another opportunity to get the character, and you don't have to spend all your life savings on getting them at the first time. Now yes, that means the Spiral Abyss buffs will apply to them, but please don't be discouraged by things like the meta, because if you are constantly chasing the meta, you will get burnt out eventually, and this is something I learned the hard way. Please pull for the characters that you actually enjoy and don't try to burn yourself out by farming a bunch of Primogems just to get the character, especially if you don't enjoy playing them and you're just pulling for them because people tell you that they're good. Another important thing that I should mention is don't roll on the character banner if you're not 100% certain on getting the character. For a character like Chaska and Sitlali, I was not really 100% sure if I actually liked that character because I was having a lot of mixed feelings about them. Now if you aren't 100% sure on whether or not you actually like the character, then avoid pulling for that character on their banner just in case you do get them and end up regretting it. Especially if you've saved up a lot of Primogems for a future character, you don't want to end up with a character you hate as opposed to a character that you actually love. If you're not sure whether or not you actually enjoy a character, here are some things you can look out for. The first thing is their playstyle. Chaska has a very unique playstyle and it can really only appeal to some people. If you are not one of those people that actually like Chaska's playstyle, then you might want to skip her, because in the end, you're the one playing these characters and you're the ones who's going to be using them in your team comps. If you don't like the way they play, then I really recommend skipping that character and perhaps waiting for another time when they come back, and maybe you might change your mind. I know a character like Mualani can really do a lot of damage, but I am just not a fan of her playstyle. To me, it's a little bit confusing, and I'm not as big of a fan as a primary on-field DPS as opposed to switching out a bunch of characters. characters, therefore I wouldn't pull for Mulaney, even though I know that she's super good and she's super meta. If you pull for a character purely based on damage or what you see online, yes, you might end up with a character that is really strong, but if you don't enjoy playing them, then really what's the point in playing if you're not having fun? Ultimately, the goal is to enjoy playing Genshin, and having a character that you don't really like might not really be worth your time. A character that comes to mind is Arlecchino, since she is one of the greatest pyro DPSs, but because of her Bond of Life playstyle and her charged attacks, I'm not so fond of it, which is why I didn't pull for her. I don't really regret skipping her since I have characters that I enjoy more, such as Hu Tao. They might not be as good as Arlecchino, but I do enjoy them more, and I'd rather spend my Primogems on a character I actually do like. Now here are some quick do's and don'ts for pulling. The first one is don't pull to build pity on a banner. If you want to pull for a character that is coming up, I don't suggest you pull on the character's banner prior to that character coming up, because what if you accidentally get that character you don't want, and you've sort of wasted your shot at getting the character you do want. Now at the time of recording this, Venti is coming up on the banner, and I could pull on Varessa's banner to carry over the pity, but I'd rather end up with a Venti than a C1 Varessa. The next don't is don't spend your primos on the standard banner. I hope no one's making this mistake in this day and age. We all know that you can get free pulls from the shop or the battle pass, so there really is no need to be spending your Primogems on this banner. I know that you can get Mizuki, but it's not worth it considering the fact that there's so many other characters you can get that are not Mizuki, so you're better off saving those precious Primogems and spending on a character's banner that you actually do enjoy. The next thing that I really hope you guys know is don't try to pull just for the 4-star on the banner. Ian-san is a new character that came in this patch who accompanied Varessa's banner, and a lot of people are pulling just for Ian-san on the banner, which might not be the best option, especially if you're not interested in the main character on the banner. Remember that 4 stars are not guaranteed. You're only guaranteed a 4-star every 10 pull, but you're not guaranteed which one. Therefore, if you are pulling on the banner to get a particular 4-star, you are less likely to get the one you want, whereas the 5-star is 100% guaranteed since it literally is their banner, but there are cases where you have a higher chance at getting C6 of the 5-star than getting C6 of that particular 4-star. Also remember that these 4-star characters do come back quite often, and they might even come back more frequently than the 5-star character does, and also you could get them for free in an event, and one of them was literally Auroron, who was just on a banner. This also applies to weapons, except weapons are a little bit different, which is why I have a separate tip for the weapon banner in general, and that is only pull on the weapon banner if you have both characters whose weapons are featured on here. I always bring up the mistake of the Kinich banner, and when I pulled for Engulfing Lightning, I accidentally got Kinich's weapon, so the first thing I decided to do was literally pull for Kinich to make sure I had someone who could use his weapon, since a lot of the weapons nowadays are very specific to the character it's made for, such as Varessa's, which is all about plunging attack, and it's harder for other characters to use the weapon except for the one it was designed for. So again, only pull on the weapon banner if you have the characters for both these weapons. And if you're pulling for just a 4-star on the weapon banner, I don't really think it's worth it. There are still other free-to-play options, and a lot of the event weapons do come around, and they are good for those characters as well. So just keep an eye out on event weapons and free-to-play options in the craftable section, or weapons you can find from exploring the world map. Other general tips I have about saving Primogems is to again set goals and limits for your Primogems, similar to the ones for the Mora. If you have a goal on getting a character, you might want to set a Primogem goal to collect a certain amount of Primogems before that character's banner comes around, just so you can guarantee getting that character. For me, this is when I found out about Albedo's existence, and I wanted to get 28,000 Primogems, and I worked so hard farming the entire map of Genshin just to be able to afford and guarantee him in case I lost the 50-50, and that's kind of where my whole saving journey started in the first place. So who knows, maybe aggressive saving might just lead you to a lot of Primogems. Also, another thing you can do is set a limit to the amount of Primogems you're spending. This is especially crucial if another character is coming up in a later patch, and if you really want that character in a later patch, make sure that you set a limit on the amount you're spending currently so that you can still afford them later and won't have to wait for their rerun again. And now the final tip that I have if you are going to be pulling, and that is to pull over a long period of time. Now this can differ from literally 3 days to a week or the entirety of that character's banner, but I tend to notice when I pull over a long period of time and see my Primogems going down slowly, I feel a lot better about my spending as opposed to spending all in one sitting. When I dropped about 20k Primogems just for Varessa in one sitting, I felt so bad about myself, and I've also felt super burnt out considering all the work I had spent has just gone down the drain, whereas if I just instead pulled over a longer period of time, I might have even felt better. So that is my advice advice to you, if you do decide to pull on a character's banner, just pull for them over a longer period of time. There's still the chance to back out before you spend too much. Anyways, that was my collection of saving tips. Hopefully you found something helpful here and you might apply it to your own Genshin account. Thank you again for being here to watch this video. If you have any questions or suggestions, please leave it in the comments. I will try my best to get to them. Hopefully this also answers a lot of your questions. I know some of you have been requesting for this video. So to those that did, thank you so much. I had so much fun coming up with all of these tips and recollecting on my past Genshin life to hopefully improve your future ones. Either way, I'll see you all in our next video. Have a wonderful day, good luck on your pulls, and bye!